Okay, so I'd like to walk you through the concept of what I mean by dead zones. So, let's take this scenario. So let's say we are -1 against Luke. So let's say, off of a dive kick, we're likely to be 0 or -1. Right? About this spacing? This is a scenario where, at this distance, on counter hit, Luke can get crouch strong into crouch jab. But let's say in some circumstance we're further away, right? We are, let's say, -1 on block, so, or 0 on block, right? So if we do it like this, we're -1, we're in Cammy's 4-framer range, so if Luke were to do a crouching medium punch here, right? It's too slow. It's a 6-frame normal, and we're -1 when we do a 4-framer, so it's 1 frame too slow to trade, 2 frames too slow to win outright. So we can just do this at -1, and then we can steal the turn. However, our biggest threat is if he uses his 4-framer in this range as well. However, at this range, his crouch jab won't do anything because it's outside of its actual threat area. See? He responds with crouch jab, crouch strong. It does not reach at this distance. So this is a range where if we're -1 or 0 or whatever, we can hit our 4-framer and then have a superior range of our 4-framer over his. And even though we're negative or 0, we still distinctly have the advantage because we are in his 4-framer and 5-framer dead zone. So, if he does a light, he can't really get much off of it, and if he does something slower, like a crouch medium punch or a crouch medium kick, he loses. So, the risk that we take from running into his 4-framer that doesn't really confirm into a meaningful combo at this distance, very low, and if we hit any of his slower actions, very good. He has like 1 meaningful 5-framer, and that's a standing light kick, and it also doesn't convert very well into anything at this distance. So that's what I mean by a dead zone. If we can enter a range where his dead zone is his 4-framer is kind of shitty at this range, his 5-framer is kind of shitty and mediocre at this range, both are not very threatening options at this distance. Which means that if we're in this distance and our 4-framer will convert on counter hit or normal hit into something, that means that our 4-framer threat range is superior to his, and therefore if we can enter this range, even if we're if we're 0 or -1, then we can fuck him up. If we're -2, we'll trade with his 6-framer, his crouching medium punch, but that's also not as bad as, you know, losing outright. So 0 to -1, and then maybe -2 are ranges where we can be in this space, and we can still fuck with Luke. So I have documented all characters and their relevant 4-framers, 5-framers, 6-framers, 7-framers, and 8-frame options in distances to demonstrate where they have dead zones. So Luke, his 4-frame options, he could get a counter hit crouch light punch and a crouch medium punch, or he could get a counter hit crouch light punch drive rush, crouch medium punch. So what I mean by this is if I switch to Luke here, if you're not close enough to get crouch light punch and a crouch medium punch, you can just raw drive rush off of it, and it's very expensive, and if they block, then it's kind of fake and can get blown up by 5-framers or faster, or EXTPs, etc. So, not a great option, very costly, but that is an option that works where his other options won't. He can do the same thing with stand light kick, if he's willing to drive rush cancel it. If this is on block, it's slightly better for him. This will trade with 4-framers if he does this, which is better for him, but it's still not a great option. And if he does a 5-framer, he can do stand light kick fireball, which doesn't go into anything, but it's still something that he can do. EX does not combo, so he would have to do that. So those are his options. He has Crouching Light Punch, and then he also has Suppressor. Now, this is the other thing, is that Suppressor does add an element of throwing this off, because if he didn't have Suppressor, he would have a terrible 4-framer and 5-framer dead zone, where his 4-framer and 5-framer options, if you're out of range for crouch jab, crouch strong, you could just maul him all day with your superior 4-framer conversions. However, because he does have Suppressor, unique attacks, because he does have Suppressor, he can bust out at some of these scenarios. Now, again, this depends, because a lot of times you'll be using, like, 4-framers against him, so, you know, it won't necessarily punish lights, or not all lights, not some of these really fast lights like Cammy has, but, this is if this was 2 frames slower in terms of overall recovery, it would get clipped by the Suppressor in this instance. So anyways, Suppressor does throw that off, especially when you get further out. It will punish frame traps that, or it will deal, especially with 5-framers, like if you are -1, and then you do like a 5-framer or something, and if it would trade with Crouch Medium Kick or something, then Suppressor will punish counter it usually. So like if I were to do that with Crouch Strong, right? Trade with the 5-framer, but Suppressor will beat it. So anyways, yeah. But then once he gets up to 6-framers, he's got no problem. His 6-frame Crouch Strong is really good. He doesn't have a 7-framer with 7-frame range. He used to. It wasn't a very strong one. It was just Stand Medium Kick, but they nerfed that, so it's not a 7-framer anymore. And then he has low forward, and his low forward is, you know, a very good low forward. So, because he doesn't have a 7-framer for 7-framer range, there is a slight gap between his Crouch Medium Punch and Crouch Medium Kick. So if I put the count to 3 for the block counts, right? We can set up this scenario where we can be in between their ranges. So this is me being in 7-framer range right here. So if I just do like a little walk back block like that, I will still block his 8-framer. If I did it correctly. But I can whiff punish his 6-framer. So that is another way to take advantage of this dead zone. If you take advantage of the gap in space between 6-framer range and 8-framer range, you can block the 8-framer but whiff punish the 7-framer. And then if you get used to that, then if it's just the 8-framer you have to worry about and you're -2 here, then you can 5-framer it. Now, you can't do that if he's going to do Crouch Strong, because it'll blow you up. But if you take advantage of this space and then whiff punish the Crouch Strong, then if you can condition him to not use Crouch Strong in 7-framer or 8-framer range, then you can still be -2 and still beat his 8-framers. So that, his lack of a 7-framer to cover both of those options is a still dead zone. It's just a small dead zone. So I have documented here all the characters, and I put a little number next to them for how strong I think their options are, going from 1 to 5, and then for the absurd ones, I put 6. So Luke has 4-framer and 5-framer dead zones. So 1 to 2, pretty weak options. So dead zone here. 6-framer's amazing. He has no 7-framer. That should be nothing. And then, right. And then his 8-framer is totally good. So, yeah. Jamie has counter hit Crouching Light Punch that goes all the way into his Crouching Medium Kick, which hits a million miles away. He can also just do Crouch Light Punch into Rekka. Doesn't need a counter hit for that. And he has Back Heavy Punch, which will sway and punish some actions as well. It's not as good as Suppressor or Cammy's Forward Heavy Kick, but it does work in a similar way. And then he has stand light kick into light rekka, doesn't need a counter hit, will convert, and he has stand heavy punch, which is one of the most underutilized moves in the entire game for how actually fucking nuts it is on defense. And how much its 5-framer will just eat up fucking moves. So he has absolutely no dead zone here. Crouching medium punch I only put here just because it yields more reward. His stand light kick actually has more range than his crouching medium punch, so you can ignore that. But he doesn't have like a strong 6-framer range. Then he has crouching medium kick for his 7-framers, and then he doesn't need an 8-framer because his crouch medium kick reaches at the distance that an 8-framer would. So, no real dead zone to exploit. He has no weak point where his buttons are just not going to be stronger than your buttons. No dead zone for Jamie. Manon has stand light punch, a pretty stubby stand light punch, short range, and crouch light punch reaches slightly further but has worse conversions on hit, but it's better on block, whatever, blah blah blah. So, there are ranges where you can outspace stand light punch, at which point she could, if she's confident it'll outspace, she could buffer stand jab into a knockdown special, in case you stick out a normal into it. But in any other sense, if you're like -1, 0, or -2, you can take advantage of her, and she has kind of a dead zone in her gameplay until she gets to her 7-framer, which is the best 7-framer in the game. And so, but anything underneath that, it's questionable because she does have options, and she will use those options. Manon players are more likely to do things like stand light kick, drive rush cancel, or crouch jab, drive rush cancel, because they need to do it. So, and the grappler archetype changes the importance of certain moves, where if Manon can win like a close range interaction, it's much better for her and more important than if you're like Cammy and you were to do like stand light kick, drive rush, whatever. So anyways, so Manon is not like as helpless in these like dead zones where buttons are kind of weaker than some other characters, but yes, dead zone you can take advantage of. Against Manon, I would say if you are like Cammy and you dive kick on Manon and you're -1 or 0 or something, I would say great opportunity to just like mash jab anyways, and so long as you're not -2, you can't get hit by the grab or the command grab. So if you're just -1 or 0, just mash jab, and if you get hit by the stand light punch, you are either going to get no real combo, or you're going to get a very small, heavily scaled light combo of stand jab, counter hit, stand light kick into the rond point for very low damage and a little bit of a knockdown, but not a hugely threatening scenario. And if Manon does anything else that's slower, like a command grab or like a 7-frame medium punch, your stand jab will beat her. So, another dead zone. Anyways, I have put all of the characters' theoretical options, their 7-framer, 6-framer, etc. Some things you might not know about that are on this list. For instance, Honda here. Honda, EX Splash. EX Splash is a 6-framer. Honda players need to do this more on defense, because if he doesn't use this, he has an enormous dead zone between his 4-framer and his 8-framer. Alright, because like his 5-framer reaches slightly further. So he has a 4-framer, which is one of the best 4-framers in the game. He has a 5-framer, which is okay. And then he has fucking jack shit until 8 frames. And his 8-framer isn't even that good. He has a stubby 8-framer, and then he has no 6-framer and no 7-framer of mention. Which means that there's a huge dead zone that you can take advantage of, where if you're outside of his jab range, so long as you're like, you can be -3 and you can still mash your fucking 5-framer into him, because it'll still beat his crouch medium punch. So yes, he has a huge dead zone where you can be minus, but so long as you're outside his jab range, you can just keep mashing on him. Except for 6-frame EX Splash. And I want to even demonstrate that EX Splash is actually better than you think for this. So yeah, hugely important for him to leverage this as his 6-framer so that he doesn't get bullied by bullshit. So anyways, yes, those are the important things. Anything else that's interesting? Not particularly. Some of these you like might disagree on my assessment overall. Like, for example, Akuma has like an insanely good 5-framer. That being said, he has to commit to spending, like, he would have to do stand light kick into EX Hadouken or drive rush, which is not safe, so he'd have to do it into EX Fireball for it to be like, you know, good, for it to like actually yield much reward. He can just do 5-framer into Fireball, but it's not going to be like the most threatening thing. So I put it as a dead zone only because he doesn't get like a safe knockdown special like Blanca, who can just do light kick into electric, and he has like one of the most absurd 4-frame checks in the game. So anyways, yes, I will provide this document. This has all the dead zones and my basic assessments of what options they have and what they'll do. And you can take advantage of these dead zones. Put yourself in the spaces between their dead zones. If they're 4-framer or 5-framer dead zones, put yourself where your buttons are superior and beat up their dead zones.